A wealthy man on a plane looked at a single mother and her 6-year-old daughter and said the words no child should ever hear. "You should know your place. You don't belong here." The little girl started to cry. She looked up at her mother and whispered, "Mommy, did I do something wrong?" The mother had no answer. She had just buried her own mother. She was exhausted. She was alone. And now, a stranger was humiliating her child simply because they were not rich enough. But she did not know that the quiet man sitting beside her, the one in the old flannel shirt and scruffy beard, was about to stand up. She did not know who he was. And when she found out, her life would never be the same. Meredith Calloway had never been one to believe in fate. She had spent 36 years learning that life did not hand you miracles. It handed you double shifts at the community clinic in Boston, where she worked as a nurse, and sleepless nights caring for a sick mother, and the kind of exhaustion that settled into your bones like winter cold. But she would later look back on this ordinary Tuesday evening and realize that everything changed the moment she stepped onto that plane. The flight from Tucson to Newark was supposed to be simple. A 4-hour journey back to the East Coast, back to the small apartment she shared with her daughter, back to the job that kept them fed but never comfortable. Meredith had just buried her mother 3 days ago in a small cemetery where the desert wind scattered dust across weathered headstones. She had stood there in her only black dress, holding her 6-year-old daughter's hand, watching the casket lower into the Arizona dirt. Now she sat in seat 14B of the economy cabin, her daughter Lily curled against her side, and tried to remember how to breathe normally. Lily was small for her age, with tangled brown hair and wide eyes that still held the confusion of a child who did not fully understand why Grandma was not coming back. She wore a simple cotton dress and sneakers that were starting to show wear at the toes. Meredith herself wore a plain blouse and dark jeans, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. She had not thought about appearances when packing for her mother's funeral. She had only thought about surviving it. 20 minutes into the flight, Lily's face began to pale. "Mommy?" the little girl whispered, tugging at Meredith's sleeve. "My tummy feels funny." Meredith recognized the signs immediately. Before she could reach for the air sickness bag, Lily lurched forward and was sick on the seat in front of her. The passenger in that seat jumped up with a sharp exclamation. Nearby travelers grimaced and looked away. Meredith grabbed napkins from her purse and tried to clean up while comforting her sobbing daughter. "I'm so sorry," she kept repeating. She's never flown before. A flight attendant appeared within moments. She was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a name tag that read Patricia. She took one look at the situation and her expression softened. "Is she all right?" Patricia asked, kneeling beside them. "Airsick," Meredith explained. "We're coming back from my mother's funeral. It's been a difficult week." Patricia's eyes flickered with sympathy. She glanced at Lily, who was crying quietly against her mother's chest. "Wait here," Patricia said. "Let me see what I can do." She returned a few minutes later with a warm smile. "We have 2 empty seats in business class. More space for your daughter to lie down, and the air circulation is better. It might help her feel less nauseous." Meredith hesitated. "I can't afford." "It's complimentary?" Patricia interrupted gently. "You've clearly had a hard week." Meredith wanted to refuse, but Lily whimpered against her shoulder, and pride suddenly seemed like a luxury she could not afford. "Thank you," she whispered. Patricia helped them gather their small carry-on and led them toward the front of the plane. As Meredith walked through the curtain separating economy from business class, she became aware of the difference. Wider seats, softer lighting, passengers who glanced at her wrinkled clothes with expressions ranging from curiosity to mild disapproval. She lowered her eyes and followed Patricia to row 3. Her new seat was by the window. The seat beside her was occupied by a man she barely noticed as she settled Lily in. He was quiet, dressed in a worn flannel shirt and faded jeans, a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. He had a scruffy beard and was reading a paperback book on philosophy, earphones in his ears. He looked, she thought, like someone who did not care about appearances, like someone who valued comfort over impression. As if sensing her struggle with Lily, he shifted in his seat to give them more room. Without a word, he reached into his bag and offered Meredith a bottle of water. For her, he said simply. Small sips help with the nausea. Thank you, Meredith replied, surprised by the kindness. He nodded and returned to his book. She helped Lily drink a few sips, and slowly the color began returning to her daughter's cheeks. Meredith allowed herself a small breath of relief. That was when she noticed the couple in the row ahead. The man was in his early 30s, with the polished appearance of someone born into wealth. Perfectly styled hair, a designer watch on his wrist, a shirt that probably cost more than Meredith made in a week. His face was flushed, and there was a glaze to his eyes that suggested he had been drinking heavily. Meredith would later learn that his name was Bradford Sterling, the son of a wealthy financier, known in certain circles for his short temper and a previous incident with a former employee that had been quietly settled out of court. He was returning from a business trip that had gone poorly, and the alcohol had not improved his mood. Beside him sat a woman who looked like she had stepped out of a magazine. Blonde hair perfectly styled, diamond earrings catching the cabin light. Her name was Vivienne, and though her expression was composed, there was something guarded in her eyes. Bradford turned in his seat and looked directly at Meredith and Lily. He did not bother to lower his voice. Vivienne, would you look at this? What happened to standards? Business class used to mean something. Now it seems anyone can just wander in. Meredith felt her stomach tighten. She told herself to ignore it. Vivienne shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. A little while later, Lily tugged at Meredith's sleeve. Mommy, I'm hungry. Meredith reached into her bag and pulled out a sandwich she had made that morning. It was simple, just bread and cheese, wrapped in paper napkins. She unwrapped it carefully and handed it to Lily. Bradford noticed immediately. He wrinkled his nose and pressed the call button for the flight attendant. When Patricia arrived, he gestured toward Meredith without looking at her. Excuse me, but is outside food even allowed in this cabin? There's a certain smell. This is business class. There should be standards. Patricia remained professional. Sir, there's no policy against passengers bringing their own food. Bradford scoffed. Of course there isn't. How wonderful. Patricia gave Meredith an apologetic glance and moved away. Bradford turned further in his seat, addressing Meredith directly now. His words were slightly slurred but sharp with contempt. You know, there's a reason different classes exist on airplanes. It's so that people who can actually afford to travel properly don't have to sit with people who clearly don't belong. You should know your place. Meredith's hands trembled, but she kept her voice steady. We were offered these seats. We're not bothering anyone. Not bothering anyone? Bradford laughed. Your kid was sick all over economy class. Now you're up here with your homemade lunch, acting like you belong. Some people just don't know how to behave in certain environments. Lily had stopped eating. She was looking up at Bradford with wide, frightened eyes. Mommy, she whispered, did I do something wrong? Before Meredith could answer, Bradford cut in. See? You can't even teach your child properly. Bringing her to places she doesn't belong. Letting her make a mess. What kind of mother does that? Something broke inside Meredith. Tears burned at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them back. She pulled Lily closer and said nothing, because she knew that responding would only make things worse. That was when the man beside her moved. He removed his earphones slowly, set his book aside, and unbuckled his seatbelt. Then he stood and stepped into the aisle. Meredith watched him walk forward until he was standing beside Bradford's seat. He was not particularly tall, but there was a quiet steadiness about him that commanded attention without demanding it. Bradford looked up with a sneer. "Can I help you?" The man did not raise his voice. He spoke calmly, almost gently, but every word carried weight. "I've been sitting here for the past 15 minutes, listening to you. I kept hoping you would stop on your own, but you didn't." Bradford's expression flickered. "Excuse me? Who do you think you are?" "I think I'm someone who just watched you make a 6-year-old girl ask her mother if she did something wrong. I think I'm someone who heard you tell a grieving woman she doesn't know her place. And I think that kind of behavior says a lot more about you than it does about her." He paused, letting the words settle in the quiet cabin. "That little girl just lost her grandmother. She's been sick. She's scared. And the only thing she's going to remember about this flight is a grown man telling her she doesn't belong. You have every right to your expensive seat, but you don't have the right to make a child feel worthless." Bradford stood up abruptly, his face red. "Do you have any idea who my family is? I could have you removed from this plane." The man in the flannel shirt did not step back. He met Bradford's gaze with unwavering calm. "I don't care who your family is. Money doesn't buy you the right to treat people like they're beneath you. How you treat others when you think you have power over them, that's what shows who you really are." Patricia appeared again, concern on her face. "Gentlemen, is there a problem?" Bradford pointed at the stranger. "This man is harassing me. I want him removed." Patricia looked at the man in the flannel shirt. Something flickered in her eyes, a flash of recognition, but she composed herself quickly. The man gave her a subtle shake of his head, almost imperceptible, as if asking her not to say anything. She turned to Bradford. "Sir, I've received concerns from other passengers about your comments toward a fellow guest. I need to ask you to return to your seat and refrain from any further remarks. This is outrageous. I'm the victim here." Vivian stood and placed a hand on her husband's arm. Her voice was quiet but firm. "Bradford, enough. Sit down. You've had too much to drink and you're making a scene." Bradford turned to her, incredulous. "You're taking their side?" "I'm asking you to stop," she replied. "Please." For a long moment, the cabin held its breath. Finally, Bradford dropped back into his seat with a muttered curse and turned to face forward. The man in the flannel shirt gave Patricia a small nod of thanks, then returned to his seat beside Meredith. He buckled his seatbelt and picked up his book as if nothing had happened. Meredith stared at him, her heart still racing. "Thank you," she whispered. He looked at her with eyes that held both warmth and quiet understanding. "You don't need to thank me. That should never have happened." Lily was peering around her mother, looking at the stranger with wonder. He noticed and smiled at her, a genuine smile that softened his weathered features. He raised his hand and gave her a small thumbs up. Lily smiled back. It was the first real smile Meredith had seen from her daughter in days. The cabin settled into quiet. The hum of the engines filled the silence. Outside the window, the sky was darkening, streaks of orange fading into deep blue. Meredith sat still, one arm around her daughter, trying to process what had just happened. She did not know this man. She did not know anything about him. But something had shifted between them, something she could not quite name. "I'm Meredith," she said quietly. "And this is Lily." He turned to her with that same gentle calm. "Keanu," he replied. No last name, no explanation. Just a name offered simply, like an open hand. Meredith nodded, accepting it. The plane flew on through the darkening sky, carrying them toward Newark, toward whatever came next. She did not know that within hours, a storm would force them off course. She did not know that this quiet stranger would become someone she never expected to meet. All she knew, in that moment, was that for the first time in longer than she could remember, she did not feel completely alone. The captain's voice crackled through the speakers just as the last light of evening disappeared beyond the clouds. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Due to a severe winter storm system currently affecting the entire East Coast, we will not be able to land at Newark as scheduled. Air traffic control has rerouted us to Gallup Municipal Airport in New Mexico, where we will make an emergency landing and wait for conditions to improve. We anticipate a delay of 12 to 15 hours. We apologize for the inconvenience and appreciate your patience. A wave of frustration rippled through the cabin. Passengers groaned, reached for their phones, began tapping out messages to family and colleagues. Meredith closed her eyes and let out a slow breath, as if burying her mother and being humiliated on an airplane was not enough for 1 week. Lily stirred against her shoulder. "Mommy, are we there yet?" "Not yet, sweetheart. The plane has to stop somewhere else first because of the snow." "But I want to go home." "I know, baby. I know." Meredith looked out the window. Below, the landscape had changed from desert browns to a white expanse that seemed to stretch forever. Snow was falling heavily now, swirling in the wind like tiny ghosts dancing against the darkening sky. The plane began its descent. Gallup Municipal Airport was small, the kind of regional hub that served a handful of flights a day and closed its single coffee shop by 8 in the evening. When the passengers disembarked, they were greeted by fluorescent lights, worn carpet, and the distinct chill of a building not designed for crowds. An airline representative stood near the gate with a clipboard, looking overwhelmed. Behind her, a line was already forming as passengers demanded answers and hotel accommodations. "There's one hotel within shuttle distance," the representative announced. "The Sunset Inn. About 20 rooms available. We're distributing vouchers on a first-come, first-served basis." Meredith gathered their carry-on bag and took Lily's hand. The little girl was shivering slightly, whether from cold or exhaustion, Meredith could not tell. They made their way toward the line, which had already grown to nearly 50 people. She did not see Keanu anywhere. He had slipped away quietly after the plane landed, disappearing into the crowd. Near the front of the line, a familiar voice rose above the murmur of frustrated travelers. "I don't care about your vouchers. I need the best room you have, and I need it now." Bradford Sterling was leaning over the counter, his face flushed with irritation. Vivienne stood a few feet behind him, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. The airline representative maintained her composure. "Sir, the Sunset Inn only has standard rooms. There are no suites available." Bradford slammed his palm against the counter, making the representative flinch. "This is unacceptable. Do you understand who I am? I want 2 rooms connected. Make it happen." "Sir, we have limited availability. I need to ensure all passengers have somewhere to stay." Bradford pulled out his wallet and threw several bills on the counter. $500. Right now. Stop wasting my time." The representative hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. Other passengers whispered among themselves, some shaking their heads in disapproval. Eventually, Bradford got his rooms. He snatched the key cards without a word of thanks and strode away, Vivienne following silently behind him. Meredith and Lily waited. The line moved slowly. Lily began to cough, a dry, rattling sound that made Meredith's heart clench with worry. She pressed her hand to her daughter's forehead and felt the unmistakable warmth of a fever. It felt like at least 100 degrees. "Mommy, I don't feel good." "I know, sweetheart. Just a little longer." By the time they reached the front of the line, Meredith already knew what the representative was going to say. "I'm so sorry, Mom. We've run out of vouchers. All the rooms have been claimed." Meredith stared at her. "What are we supposed to do?" "You're welcome to wait here in the terminal. We have some blankets available. We'll do our best to find alternative arrangements." Meredith felt the ground tilt beneath her feet. She looked down at Lily, who was leaning heavily against her leg, eyes half closed, cheeks flushed with fever. They were stranded in the middle of New Mexico, in a snowstorm, with no room and no medicine. She found a corner near a heating vent and sat down on the cold floor, pulling Lily into her lap. She wrapped her coat around her daughter and held her close. "It's okay," she whispered. "We'll be okay." Footsteps approached. Meredith looked up and felt her stomach drop. Bradford Sterling stood over them, a smirk on his face, coffee cup in one hand and phone in the other. Well, no room at the inn. You see, this is exactly what I was talking about earlier. If you had money, you wouldn't be sitting on the floor right now." Meredith did not respond. She pulled Lily closer. "Some people just aren't prepared for the real world." Bradford continued, always expecting handouts, always blaming others for their situation. Something inside Meredith snapped. She stood up carefully, settling Lily on the chair beside her, and faced Bradford directly. Her voice was low but steady. "I work 60 hours a week as a nurse. I haven't taken a vacation in 4 years. Every dollar I make goes to rent and food and keeping my daughter safe. I just buried my mother, who worked 3 jobs so I could go to college. And now I'm listening to a man who has probably never struggled for anything tell me I should have been more prepared." Bradford's smirk faltered. "I don't want your money or your pity. I just want you to stop being cruel to my daughter. She's 6 years old. Is that really so hard to understand?" Bradford's face went red. He stepped closer, pointing his finger at her. "You have no right to speak to me that way. One phone call, and I could make your life very difficult." Before Meredith could respond, a familiar voice cut through the tension. "That's enough." Keanu stepped between them. He was calm, hands loose at his sides, but there was something in his stance that made Bradford take an involuntary step backward. "You again." Bradford spat. "What? Are you following me around playing hero?" "I'm not playing anything. I'm just not going to watch a grown man threaten a mother and her sick child." "Or what?" "I'm going to stand right here until you walk away. And if you don't, every person in this airport will know exactly what kind of man you are." Bradford glanced around. Several passengers had stopped to watch. A few had their phones out. Another voice joined the conversation. "Bradford, stop." Vivienne stepped forward, her face pale but her voice firm. She looked at her husband with an expression Meredith had not seen before. Disappointment. "Look at what you're doing. You're threatening a woman whose child is sick. This isn't who I married." Bradford turned to her. "You're taking their side. I'm taking the side of basic decency. I can't watch you treat people like they're worthless just because they have less money than you." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Bradford turned and walked away without another word, disappearing down the terminal corridor. Vivienne lingered for a moment. She looked at Meredith, and something passed between them. "I'm sorry," Vivienne said softly, "for all of it." Then she followed her husband. Keanu turned to Meredith. "Are you all right?" "I think so." Her hands were still trembling. "I couldn't stay quiet anymore." "You shouldn't have had to." He reached into his pocket and pulled out 2 key cards. "I booked 2 rooms online while we were still on the plane. This one's for you and Lily." Meredith stared at the key card. "I can't accept this. Your daughter has a fever. You need a warm room, not a night on the airport floor. Take it. No payment, no strings." Meredith looked at Lily, curled up on the chair, shivering despite the coat wrapped around her. "Thank you," she whispered, taking the key card. "Take care of her. That's all that matters." The Sunset Inn was a modest roadside motel with faded paint and thin walls, but it was warm and quiet. Meredith carried Lily inside and laid her gently on the bed, pulling the covers up to her chin. She touched her daughter's forehead again. The fever had climbed higher, maybe 101 degrees now. Lily's skin was hot, her eyes glassy. "Mummy, my head hurts." "I know, baby. I'm going to find some medicine." But Meredith had no medicine. She had packed light for the funeral. A knock at the door made her jump. She opened it to find Keanu standing in the hallway. "How is she?" "The fever's getting worse. I don't have any medicine, and I don't know if there's a pharmacy nearby. I called the front desk. The hotel doesn't have anything, but there's a pharmacy about 5 miles down the road." Meredith looked past him at the window. Snow was falling heavily, the wind howling. It's a blizzard out there. I've driven in worse conditions. Stay here with Lily. I'll be back as soon as I can. Before she could protest, he was gone. Meredith sat on the edge of the bed, holding Lily's hand, watching the snow pile up against the window. She thought about this stranger who had defended her on the plane, given up his hotel room, and was now driving through a blizzard to buy medicine for a child he had just met. 40 minutes later, the door opened and Keanu stepped inside, snow dusting his hair and shoulders, his jacket damp from the wind. He set a plastic bag on the nightstand. Children's fever reducer, some instant soup, juice boxes, and crackers. The pharmacist said to give her the medicine every 4 to 6 hours. If the fever doesn't break by morning, she needs to see a doctor. Meredith took the bag with trembling hands. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. She gave Lily the medicine and coaxed her to drink some juice. Over the next hour, the fever began to subside. Lily's breathing evened out, and she fell into a peaceful sleep. Meredith stepped out into the hallway, needing air. She found Keanu sitting in an old chair near the vending machines, staring out at the falling snow. She sat down beside him. For a while, neither spoke. I work as a nurse at a community clinic in Boston, Meredith said finally. The pay isn't great, but I love helping people when they're scared and vulnerable. Keanu listened without interrupting. My husband left when I was 7 months pregnant. Said he wasn't ready to be a father. I've raised Lily alone since the day she was born. She paused. My mother was diagnosed with lung cancer 3 years ago. I took care of her while working full-time and raising Lily. She passed away last week. She looked at him. I dream about giving Lily a better life, a good school, opportunities I never had. But I don't know if that will ever be possible. Keanu was quiet for a moment. I understand what it's like to lose people you love. I've lost some of the most important people in my life. There were times when I wasn't sure I could keep going. He looked out at the snow. But grief doesn't disappear. You just learn to carry it differently. You find meaning in small things and keep putting one foot in front of the other. He turned to her. What you're doing for Lily, the sacrifices you make, that's everything. She's lucky to have you. Meredith felt tears prick at her eyes but blinked them back. What about you? She asked. What do you do? A faint smile crossed his face. I work in entertainment. It gives me some flexibility. She sensed there was more, but she did not press. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the snow fall. Finally, Keanu stood. You should get some rest. Meredith stood as well. Thank you for everything. If you don't mind, I'd like to send some books to Lily. She seems like she enjoys stories. Meredith was surprised. Books. I noticed she was drawing on the plane. Creative kids usually love reading. She hesitated, then gave him her address in Boston. Keanu typed it into his phone. Get some sleep, Meredith. Tomorrow will be better. He walked down the hallway to his own room. Meredith watched him go, this quiet stranger who had appeared in her life like a calm presence in the middle of chaos. She returned to her room and lay down beside Lily. Her daughter's fever had broken, her breathing soft and regular. Outside, the snow continued to fall. But inside, Meredith felt something she had almost forgotten. Not just hope, but the quiet certainty that sometimes, when you least expect it, kindness finds you. And that alone can be enough to carry you through. The next morning came quietly. The storm had passed in the night, leaving behind a world blanketed in white. Sunlight streamed through the motel window, reflecting off the fresh snow with a brightness that felt almost hopeful. Meredith woke to find Lily already sitting up in bed, her color returned, her eyes clear and bright. Mommy, I feel better. Meredith pressed her hand to her daughter's forehead. Cool. The fever had broken completely. Thank goodness, she whispered, pulling Lily into a hug. You scared me, sweetheart. Can we go home now? Soon, baby. Soon. They got dressed and packed their small bag. When Meredith opened the door to head to the lobby, she found Keanu already waiting in the hallway, his bag slung over his shoulder. "How is she?" he asked. "Much better. The fever's gone." Keanu smiled, a genuine warmth in his eyes. "Good. The shuttle to the airport leaves in 30 minutes. Lily tugged at Meredith's hand and then, without hesitation, reached out and took Keanu's hand too. She stood between them, holding on to both adults as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Uncle Keanu," she said, looking up at him. "Do you want to see my drawing?" Keanu glanced at Meredith, who shrugged with a small smile. He knelt down to Lily's height. "I would love to see your drawing." Lily pulled a folded piece of paper from her coat pocket. She had drawn it the night before while Meredith thought she was sleeping. The picture showed 3 figures standing together. One was clearly meant to be Meredith, with long brown hair. The smallest one was Lily herself, holding hands with both adults. And the third figure was a man with a scruffy beard and a hat. "That's you," Lily said, pointing proudly. "You helped us. That makes you a hero." Keanu studied the drawing for a long moment. Something shifted in his expression, something soft. "I'm not a hero," he said gently. "I'm just a regular person who did what anyone should do. When you grow up, you can do the same thing. You just have to choose to do the right thing, even when it's hard." Lily considered this with the seriousness that only a 6-year-old could muster. Then she nodded. "I'll try. That's all any of us can do." The shuttle arrived on time, and soon they were back at Gallup Municipal Airport, waiting to board the connecting flight to Newark. The small terminal was crowded with passengers from the previous night, all eager to complete their interrupted journeys. Meredith noticed that Bradford and Vivienne were also in the terminal, but they kept their distance. Vivienne had apparently requested seats far from Meredith and Lily on the new flight. She stood apart from her husband, her arms crossed, her expression closed off. Whatever conversation had passed between them since last night, it had clearly not been pleasant. Bradford looked hungover and sullen. He avoided eye contact with everyone, scrolling through his phone with aggressive swipes. The boarding process went smoothly. Meredith and Lily found their seats near the middle of the plane, with Keanu seated across the aisle. For the first hour, everything was peaceful. Lily drew pictures in a small notebook, occasionally showing them to Keanu. Meredith allowed herself to relax, watching the clouds drift past the window. Then Bradford walked past on his way to the restroom. He paused beside Meredith's seat. She felt his presence before she saw him, a shadow falling across her row. "You think you won something, don't you?" His voice was low, meant only for her ears. "You embarrassed me in front of my wife, in front of strangers. I'm going to find out who you are, where you work, where you live. You'll regret ever opening your mouth." Before Meredith could respond, Keanu was on his feet. "That's enough. Step away from her." Bradford straightened, his face twisting with anger. "This doesn't concern you. You just threatened her. That concerns everyone on this plane." Keanu pressed the call button for the flight attendant. Within moments, a crew member appeared. She was a woman in her 30s with short dark hair and a name tag that read Sandra. "Is there a problem?" she asked, looking between them. "This man just threatened this passenger," Keanu said clearly, his voice carrying to the rows around them. "He said he would find out where she lives and make her regret speaking to him. I think that needs to be documented." Sandra's expression hardened. She turned to Bradford. "Sir, is this true?" "I didn't threaten anyone. This is ridiculous." "I heard him too," said an older woman seated behind Meredith. "He said she would regret it." "I heard every word." "So did I," added a businessman across the aisle, holding up his phone. "And I recorded it." Bradford's face went pale, then red. "You have no right to record me. I'll have my lawyers deal with every single one of you." Sandra held up her hand. "Sir, I need you to lower your voice and return to your seat immediately. The captain has been notified, and there will be authorities waiting when we land." Authorities. For what? Threatening passengers and creating a disturbance on an aircraft is a federal offense. Please return to your seat. Bradford stood frozen for a moment, his fists clenched. Around him, passengers were watching, some with phones raised. He had become the spectacle he had always accused others of being. Finally, he turned and walked back to his seat without another word. Vivienne did not look at him as he sat down. She stared out the window, her face expressionless. Sandra turned to Meredith. "Are you all right, ma'am?" Meredith nodded. "Yes, thank you. We take threats very seriously. When we land, airport security will escort him off the plane first. You'll be able to deplane safely." After Sandra walked away, Keanu sat back down across the aisle. He caught Meredith's eye and gave her a small, reassuring nod. Lily, who had been watching everything with wide eyes, tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, is the angry man in trouble?" "Yes, sweetheart. But we're safe. That's what matters." The rest of the flight passed without incident. Bradford remained in his seat, silent and seething. Vivienne continued to look out the window, saying nothing. When the plane touched down at Newark Liberty International Airport, the captain's voice came over the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Newark. Please remain seated until the seatbelt sign is turned off. We will be conducting a brief security procedure before regular deplaning begins." Through the window, Meredith could see 2 airport security officers waiting on the jet bridge. The doors opened. Sandra escorted Bradford off the plane first, with Vivienne following at a distance. The security officers spoke to them briefly, then led Bradford away. Vivienne hesitated at the jet bridge entrance, looking back at the plane for a moment. Her eyes met Meredith's through the window. There was no anger in her expression, only exhaustion, and perhaps something like relief. Then she turned and followed the officers. When it was time for the other passengers to deplane, Meredith gathered their belongings and took Lily's hand. Keanu walked beside them. As they entered the terminal, a small crowd had gathered near the gate. Word had spread about the incident. A young woman with a press badge approached them, a cameraman trailing behind. "Excuse me, sir. I'm from the local news. We heard there was an incident on the flight. Would you be willing to comment?" Keanu paused. He looked at Meredith, a silent question in his eyes. She gave a small nod. He turned to face the camera. His voice was calm and measured. "I witnessed a mother and her young daughter being harassed and threatened over the past 2 days, simply because they don't have a lot of money. The man who did this believed his wealth gave him the right to treat people as less than human." He paused, choosing his words carefully. Money doesn't define a person's worth. How we treat others, especially those who can't fight back, that's what defines us. I hope people remember that. The reporter asked a follow-up question, but Keanu shook his head. "That's all I have to say. Please respect this family's privacy." He walked away from the cameras, Meredith and Lily following. They made their way to the baggage claim area. Keanu helped Meredith retrieve their suitcase. Then they walked together toward the arrivals hall, where families waited. Meredith's friend had not arrived yet. They stood near the exit as the reality of parting began to settle in. Lily threw her arms around Keanu's legs. "Don't go." Keanu knelt down and gently took her hands. "I have to go, Lily. But remember, I'm going to send you some books. Every time you read one, you can think of me? Promise." "I promise." He looked into her eyes. "And remember to listen to your mom. She's the strongest person I know. Can you do that for me?" Lily nodded seriously. "I will. Good girl." He smiled at her. "And remember, you can help people too. You just have to choose to be kind. That's all it takes." He stood and turned to Meredith. For a moment, neither spoke. "I don't know how to thank you," Meredith finally said. Keanu shook his head. "We're not strangers anymore. Just 2 people who met at the right time." Meredith extended her hand. "Goodbye, Keanu." He took her hand and held it for a moment. "Goodbye, Meredith. Take care of yourself and Lily. You deserve a good life." Then he released her hand, picked up his bag, and walked toward the other side of the terminal. Meredith watched him go until he disappeared into the crowd of travelers. Lily tugged at her sleeve. "Will we see him again, Mommy?" Meredith looked down at her daughter. "I don't know, sweetheart, but we'll never forget him." Her friend's car had just pulled up outside. Meredith picked up their suitcase and took Lily's hand. As they walked toward the exit, she carried with her something unexpected, a quiet certainty that the world, for all its cruelty, still held moments of grace. That kindness could come from the most unlikely places. She did not know what would happen next. But she knew one thing for certain. Someday, when she had the chance, she would pass this kindness on. 1 week later, Meredith Calloway stood in the small kitchen of her Boston apartment, packing Lily's lunch for school. The routines of daily life had resumed. Wake up early, make breakfast, walk Lily to the bus stop, take the train to the community clinic, work a double shift, come home, make dinner, read a bedtime story, sleep, repeat. Everything was the same as before, and yet nothing was. The apartment felt quieter now. Her mother's absence had become permanent in a way that the phone call from the hospital never had. No more Sunday afternoon calls. No more birthday cards in her mother's careful handwriting. Meredith finished packing the lunch. "Lily, time to go." Her daughter came running from the bedroom, backpack bouncing, the folded drawing from the airplane still tucked in her pocket. "Mommy, do you think Uncle Keanu will send the books soon?" "I don't know, sweetheart. We'll have to wait and see." What Meredith did not tell Lily was that she had looked up Keanu's name the night they got home. Keanu Reeves, the actor, one of the most famous people in the world. She had sat in front of her laptop, trying to reconcile the scruffy man in the flannel shirt with the face on movie posters. She had read about his kindness, his humility, the tragedies he had endured, and she understood why he had asked the reporter to respect their privacy. He had not been hiding who he was. He had simply wanted to be a person, not a celebrity. Meredith had not told anyone. Some things were too precious to share, but someone else had shared something. The video from the airport had gone viral within 48 hours. A passenger had uploaded footage of Keanu's statement, along with clips from the confrontation on the plane. Within days, it had been viewed millions of times. News outlets picked up the story. Social media exploded with commentary. Meredith found herself thrust into a spotlight she had never wanted. Strangers sent messages of support. Some called her brave, but others were less kind. "She's probably loving all this attention." One comment read, "Why didn't she just ignore him?" She made the whole thing worse. Meredith deleted the apps from her phone. She had never asked for any of this. At the clinic, some coworkers looked at her differently. One of the senior nurses suggested she avoid discussing the incident at work. Meredith agreed. She wanted nothing more than to move on. The consequences for Bradford Sterling were far more severe. Within 72 hours of the video going viral, Sterling Capital's stock had dropped 8%. Clients began pulling their accounts. The company's board of directors held an emergency meeting. At first, Bradford refused to apologize. He insisted he had done nothing wrong, that the video had been taken out of context, that he was the real victim. But when the stock continued to fall and major investors threatened to withdraw, the board gave him an ultimatum. Apologize publicly, attend mandatory training sessions on diversity and inclusion, and step away from all executive positions for 6 months. Bradford had no choice but to comply. Meredith saw the video of his public apology. He stood at a podium, jaw tight, reading from a prepared statement. "I deeply regret my behavior on the flight and at the airport. My words were unacceptable, and I take full responsibility. I am committed to learning from this experience and becoming a better person." Some people believed he was sincere. Others thought he was only sorry because he got caught. Meredith did not know which was true. She only hoped that somewhere along the way, he might actually learn something. But while the world debated Bradford's apology, Meredith faced her own crisis. The letter arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 weeks after they returned to Boston. A formal notice from her landlord. The rent would increase by 30%, effective in 60 days. The building was being renovated. Market rates were rising. Meredith did the math. Even with overtime, she could not afford the new rent, not and still pay for groceries, utilities, and Lily's school supplies. She would have to move again. The fourth time in 6 years. That night, after Lily was asleep, Meredith sat alone in the kitchen and allowed herself to cry. Just for a few minutes. Then she wiped her eyes, made a cup of tea, and started searching for affordable apartments. The next morning, Lily found her at the table, still in yesterday's clothes, surrounded by printouts. "Mommy, did you stay up all night?" "Just doing some research, sweetheart." "Are we moving?" Meredith hesitated. "We might have to, baby. Our apartment is getting more expensive." Lily's face fell. "But I like this apartment. My school is close." Meredith pulled her daughter onto her lap. "I'm going to do everything I can to figure this out. I promise." Lily looked up with trusting eyes. "Where will we go?" "I don't know yet. But wherever we go, we'll be together. That's what matters." 2 weeks after the trip, a package arrived. It was addressed to Lily. Meredith checked the return address, but there was only a post office box in Los Angeles. Lily tore into the box. Inside were 10 books. Children's books about confidence, about kindness, about remarkable women throughout history. A biography of Amelia Earhart. A picture book about Ruby Bridges. A story about a girl who learned to believe in herself. At the bottom was a small card, handwritten in neat letters. "For the little artist. Keep drawing, keep dreaming. The world needs people like you. Kay." Lily stared at the card, then looked up at her mother. "It's from Uncle Keanu." Meredith nodded, her throat tight. "Yes, baby. I think it is." That night, Lily fell asleep clutching the book about Amelia Earhart, the card tucked under her pillow. 3 weeks after the trip, another letter arrived. This one was addressed to Meredith from an organization called the Hope Forward Foundation. "Dear Ms. Calloway," the letter began. We are pleased to inform you that an anonymous donor has sponsored your housing expenses for the next 12 months through our Family Stability Program. The funds have already been transferred to your landlord's account. You will not need to relocate." Meredith read the letter 3 times. Then she called the number at the bottom. "Hope Forward Foundation, how may I help you?" "I received a letter about housing assistance. I wanted to confirm this is real. May I have your name?" "Meredith Calloway." There was a pause, the sound of typing. "Yes, Miss Calloway. Your housing has been fully funded for 1 year by an anonymous benefactor. Can you tell me who donated?" "I'm sorry, the donor requested complete anonymity. All I can tell you is that they specifically wanted to help you and your daughter." Meredith thanked the woman and hung up. She sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at the letter, trying to comprehend what had just happened. 4 weeks after the trip, Meredith received an email from Hartwell Academy, a private school known for its excellent programs and generous scholarships. "Dear Miss Calloway, we are pleased to invite your daughter, Lily Calloway, for an interview as part of our Young Scholars Scholarship Program. Her application was submitted through an educational foundation, and we were impressed by her file." Meredith stared at the screen. She had never submitted an application to Hartwell Academy. She called the admissions office. "Yes, Lily's application came through the Bright Futures Educational Foundation." The coordinator explained. "They sponsor promising students from underserved communities. Your daughter's profile was highly recommended." "Recommended by whom?" "I'm not able to disclose that, but the recommendation was very strong. Whoever submitted it clearly believes in your daughter's potential." The interview went well. Lily charmed the panel with her drawings, her curiosity, her earnest answers. "What do you want to be when you grow up?" they asked. "A doctor," Lily said. Or maybe someone who helps people, like a real-life hero. 2 weeks later, the acceptance letter arrived. Full scholarship. Starting in the fall, 6 weeks after the trip, Meredith received an email from Boston Children's Hospital. Dear Ms. Calloway, we have received an exceptional recommendation regarding your nursing qualifications and would like to invite you for an interview for the position of senior pediatric nurse in our family care unit. Meredith had not applied for the position. At the interview, the hiring manager smiled warmly. Your reference spoke very highly of you. They said you were one of the most dedicated nurses they had ever encountered. May I ask who provided the reference? The recommendation came through a professional network, and the person wished to remain anonymous. Meredith got the job. The salary was 40% higher than what she earned at the clinic. The hours were more regular. The benefits included health insurance for both of them. 2 months after the trip, one final package arrived. It was small, no larger than a shoebox. Inside was a single book, Man's Search for Meaning, by Viktor Frankl. The cover was worn, the pages yellowed, as if it had been read many times. Beneath the book was a letter, handwritten on plain paper. Meredith, you don't need anyone to save you. You never did. You just needed a fair chance. I hope these past weeks have given you that. This book helped me through the darkest times of my life. When I lost people I loved. When I didn't know how to keep going. It taught me that we cannot always control what happens to us, but we can always choose how we respond. You are stronger than you know. Lily is lucky to have you, and someday, when she grows up, she will understand what her mother sacrificed and what her mother built. Keep going. The world needs more people like you. K.R. Meredith sat at the kitchen table, the letter in her hands, tears streaming down her face. She understood now. The books, the housing, the school, the job. Every gift had come from the same quiet stranger who had sat beside her on a plane and decided that she and her daughter deserved a chance. That evening, after dinner, Meredith called Lily to the couch. I want to tell you something important, she said, pulling her daughter close. What is it, Mommy? Do you remember Uncle Keanu? Lily nodded eagerly. He sent me the books. That's right. He did something very special for us, Lily. He helped us in ways we didn't even know we needed. He paid for our apartment. He helped you get into your new school. He helped Mommy get a better job. Lily's eyes went wide. He did all that? Yes. And he didn't tell anyone. He didn't want praise or thanks. He just wanted to help. Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, why? Because that's who he is. There are people in this world who do good things not because they want something in return, but because it's the right thing to do. Like Uncle Keanu. Meredith smiled. Yes, sweetheart, exactly like Uncle Keanu. I want to be like that too. Meredith kissed the top of her head. Then you will be. When you grow up and have the chance to help someone, you do it. Not for praise, not for thanks. You do it because that's the kind of person you choose to be. Lily nodded solemnly. I promise, Mommy. They sat together on the couch as the evening light faded through the window. Meredith thought about the road ahead. The new job, the new school, the year of stability that had been given to them like an unexpected gift. She thought about Bradford Sterling and his forced apology. She thought about Keanu, out there somewhere, helping people in ways they might never know. She picked up the book he had sent and opened it to the first page. As she began to read, something settled inside her. Peace. The peace of knowing that kindness existed. That good people were out there, doing good things, asking nothing in return, and the quiet determination to become one of them. 2 years had passed since that flight from Tucson to Newark. 2 years since a stranger in a flannel shirt had stood up for a mother and her daughter on an airplane. 2 years since Meredith Calloway's life had changed in ways she never could have imagined. She stood now in the kitchen of a new apartment, larger than the old one, with windows that let in the morning light and a view of the park where Lily played after school. The neighborhood was quieter, safer, closer to Hartwell Academy where her daughter was now in second grade. Lily was 8 years old. She had grown taller, more confident, with the same wide eyes but a new spark of certainty in them. She made friends easily. She helped classmates who struggled with their reading. Her teachers described her as kind and curious, always the first to include someone who was sitting alone. Meredith watched her daughter get ready for school and felt something she had rarely allowed herself to feel before. Pride. Not just in Lily, but in herself. In what they had built together. At Boston Children's Hospital, Meredith had become one of the most respected nurses in the pediatric unit. Her colleagues trusted her. Parents requested her by name. She had been promoted twice in 2 years, and her salary now allowed them to live without the constant fear of the next bill, the next emergency, the next crisis. But the most meaningful change had nothing to do with money. 6 months after starting her new job, Meredith had founded a small organization. She called it Second Chance Moms. It started as nothing more than a support group, a dozen single mothers meeting in a community center on Saturday mornings to share their struggles and encourage one another. But it grew. Meredith used her nursing connections to help mothers find healthcare resources. She partnered with local businesses to create job training programs. She worked with a nonprofit legal clinic to help women navigate custody disputes and housing issues. She spent her evenings answering emails from mothers she had never met, women who had heard about the group and reached out in desperation. "I was where you are," she would tell them. "I know how it feels to wonder if you can make it through another day. But you can, and you don't have to do it alone." By the second anniversary of that flight, Second Chance Moms had helped more than 200 families. Meredith did not keep count. She did not care about numbers. She cared about the mother who called her crying at midnight, the child who got new school supplies because of a donation drive, the woman who landed her first stable job after years of struggling. She cared about passing it on. On a cool autumn evening, Meredith received an invitation that surprised her. The Children's Hope Foundation, one of the largest charities for underprivileged youth in New England, was hosting its annual fundraising gala. They wanted Meredith to be the keynote speaker. "Why me?" she asked the event coordinator over the phone. "Because your story matters," the woman replied. "Because people need to hear that one act of kindness can change everything. And because you've taken what happened to you and turned it into something that helps others. That's exactly the message we want to share." Meredith hesitated. She had never been comfortable with attention. She had spent 2 years quietly doing her work, avoiding interviews, declining requests to share her story publicly. But then she thought about the mothers she worked with, the ones who felt invisible, the ones who believed no one cared about their struggles. Maybe hearing her story would help them believe that things could change. "Okay," she said. "I'll do it." The gala was held at a grand hotel in downtown Boston. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. Guests in elegant evening wear mingled around tables decorated with white flowers. Nearly 300 people had gathered to support the foundation's work. Meredith wore a simple navy dress, the nicest thing she owned. Lily sat at a table near the front, wearing her favorite purple dress and clutching a small notebook filled with drawings. When Meredith took the stage, her heart was pounding. The lights were bright. The audience was waiting. She took a breath and began to speak. 2 years ago, I was a single mother returning from my own mother's funeral. I was exhausted. I was grieving, and I was sitting on an airplane with my 6-year-old daughter when a man decided that we did not belong in the same cabin as him. The room was silent. He did not know that I worked 60 hours a week as a nurse. He did not know that I had spent 3 years caring for my dying mother while raising my daughter alone. He did not know anything about my life. He only knew that I did not look wealthy enough to deserve respect. She paused, letting the words settle. But someone else was on that plane. A stranger I had never met. He did not know me either. He had no reason to get involved. But when he saw what was happening, he stood up. He looked at the man who was humiliating us and said, "That is enough." Meredith's voice grew stronger. That stranger did not just defend me that day. In the weeks that followed, he quietly helped me rebuild my life. He helped my daughter get into a good school. He helped me find a better job. He gave us a chance that we never could have created on our own. I did not know who he was until later. And when I found out, I understood something important. True greatness is not about fame or wealth. It is about what you do when no one is watching. It is about choosing to help when you have nothing to gain. She looked out at the audience. I am not here tonight to tell you about myself. I am here to tell you that every single one of you has the power to change someone's life. You do not need to be rich. You do not need to be famous. You just need to be willing to see the people around you. To stand up when you witness injustice. To offer help when someone is struggling. One act of kindness. That is all it takes. And you never know how far it will reach. The applause that followed was warm and sustained. Meredith saw people wiping their eyes. She saw others nodding, as if something she had said had reached them. She stepped down from the stage, relieved that it was over, and made her way toward Lily's table. That was when she saw him. He was standing in the back of the room, near the exit. He wore a simple dark jacket over a plain shirt, his beard a little grayer than she remembered, his posture the same quiet stillness she had never forgotten. Keanu. Their eyes met across the crowded room. Meredith excused herself from the people who had gathered to congratulate her and walked toward him. Her heart was beating fast, but not from nervousness, from something else. Gratitude, surprise, joy. "You came," she said when she reached him. He smiled, that same gentle smile she remembered. "I heard someone was telling a good story about kindness tonight. I wanted to hear it for myself." "You already know the story. You were there?" Keanu shook his head slightly. "The story you told was not about me. It was about you. About a mother who never gave up. About someone who took the help she received and multiplied it 100 times over." Meredith felt her eyes sting. "I would not be here without you. You would have found a way. I just made it a little easier." They stood in silence for a moment, the noise of the gala fading around them. "Why did you do it?" Meredith asked quietly. "All of it. The housing, the school, the job. You did not know me. You did not owe me anything." Keanu looked at her for a long moment before answering. "I believe that life is not fair. Some people are born with everything. Others have to fight for every small thing they get. But I also believe that people can make life more fair. Not by changing the whole world, but by helping the people right in front of them." He glanced toward the table where Lily was sitting. "You deserved a chance. Lily deserved a future. I had the ability to help, so I did. It is as simple as that." Before Meredith could respond, a small voice interrupted them. "Uncle Keanu!" Lily came running across the room and threw herself into his arms. Keynote knelt down to catch her, laughing softly. "Look at you," he said. "You have grown so much." "I'm 8 now," Lily announced proudly. "And I read all the books you sent me. Every single one? Every single one?" "Yes, and I have something for you." She reached into her notebook and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a drawing, carefully colored with crayons and markers. Keanu unfolded it slowly. The picture showed many people standing together. In the center were 3 figures that Meredith recognized: herself, Lily, and a man with a scruffy beard. But surrounding them were dozens of other figures, mothers and children of all sizes and colors. "Who are all these people?" Keanu asked. "Those are the moms and kids that Mommy helps now," Lily explained. "I drew them because they are like our family. And you are in the middle because you started it all." Keanu stared at the drawing for a long time. When he looked up, his eyes were glistening. "This is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever given me." he said quietly. Lily beamed. Keanu stood and looked at Meredith. You have done something remarkable. This. He gestured at the drawing, at the room, at everything around them. This is what matters? Not money, not fame. This, Meredith nodded, unable to speak. I should go? Keanu said. I do not like crowds very much. He smiled apologetically. But I am glad I came. I am glad I got to see what you have built. Will you stay for dinner? Meredith asked. We could talk more. Catch up. Keanu shook his head gently. Not tonight. But I will keep sending books to this one. He ruffled Lily's hair. If that is okay with you. Yes, Lily exclaimed. Send more adventure stories. Those are my favorite. Adventure stories it is. He turned to Meredith one last time. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Keanu stepped forward and hugged her. It was brief, warm, and full of everything that words could not say. I am proud of you, he whispered near her ear. You did this. Remember that? Then he stepped back, waved at Lily, and walked toward the exit. Meredith watched him go, this quiet man who had changed her life and asked for nothing in return. He did not look back. He simply merged into the evening crowd and disappeared. Lily tugged at her mother's hand. Mummy, will Uncle Keanu come back? Meredith looked down at her daughter. I do not know, sweetheart. But the important thing is that he was there when we needed him. And now it is our turn to be there for others. Lily nodded seriously. Like what you do with the moms. Exactly like that. I want to help too. When I grow up, I want to be like you and Uncle Keanu. Meredith knelt down and pulled her daughter into a hug. Then you will be. You just have to remember to be kind, even when it is hard. Especially when it is hard. I will? Mommy, I promise. They walked out of the hotel together, hand in hand, into the cool autumn night. The city lights glittered around them. The streets were alive with people going about their lives, each one carrying their own stories, their own struggles, their own hopes. Meredith thought about the road that had led her here, the grief, the humiliation, the fear, and then the unexpected kindness of a stranger who had seen her not as someone beneath him, but as someone worth helping. She thought about Bradford Sterling, who had been forced to confront the consequences of his cruelty. She had heard that he completed his training, that he had returned to work, that he had made donations to several charities in the months that followed. Whether he had truly changed, she did not know, but she hoped that somewhere along the way, he had learned something about the kind of person he wanted to be. And she thought about Keanu, the man who could have walked past her on that plane and never looked back. The man who had chosen, again and again, to help when he did not have to. She understood now that his gift had never been about money. It had been about belief. He had believed in her when she had almost stopped believing in herself. And that belief had given her the strength to become someone who could believe in others. The circle of kindness. That was what he had started, and it was her job now to keep it going. As she and Lily walked toward the train station, Meredith made a silent promise. To keep helping, to keep giving, to keep being the person that a stranger on a plane had seen in her, even when she could not see it herself. The world was not always fair. But people could make it better, one act of kindness at a time. You know, as I finished telling this story, I cannot help but think about the contrast between two men. Bradford Sterling had everything that society tells us equals success. Money, status, a powerful family name. But he lacked the one thing that truly matters: respect for other human beings. He looked at Meredith and saw only someone beneath him. He never saw the grieving daughter, the exhausted nurse, the devoted mother fighting every day to give her child a better life. And then there was Keanu, a man who could have traveled in first class, stayed in 5-star hotels, and never given a second thought to a struggling mother in economy class. But he chose differently. He chose to sit beside her, to defend her, to drive through a blizzard for medicine, to quietly rebuild her life without ever asking for recognition. What makes this story special is not that Keanu Reeves is a famous actor. It is that he behaved like a decent human being. He did not help Meredith to be filmed, to be praised, or to become a hero. He did it because it was the right thing to do. And Meredith, she did not wait for someone to save her. She did not feel sorry for herself. She just needed a fair chance. And when she got that chance, she did not keep it for herself. She turned around and extended her hand to others who were standing where she once stood. That is the most beautiful kind of gratitude there is. As for Bradford, he was not destroyed. He was forced to apologize, to learn, to face consequences. Maybe he changed. Maybe he did not. But at least society showed him that wealth does not buy the right to treat people as worthless. Our actions define who we are, not our bank accounts. This story leaves us with a simple but profound lesson. A person's worth is not measured by the money in their bank account, the car they drive, or the clothes they wear. True worth lies in how we treat the people around us, especially those who cannot give us anything in return. You do not have to be a Hollywood star to be a good person. You do not have to be wealthy to help someone in need. Sometimes, a single word of support for someone being mistreated, a small gesture of care, or simply not turning away when you witness injustice. That is enough. The next time you see someone being treated unfairly, remember this: you can be their Keanu Reeves. No spotlight required. No recognition needed. Just the courage to stand up and do what is right. And if you are in Meredith's position, going through a difficult time, feeling alone and overwhelmed, please remember this: you are stronger than you think. And somewhere in this world, there are people ready to help. Do not give up. Thank you for listening to this story. If it touched your heart, please share it with the people you love. And do not forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another inspiring story. Remember, kindness costs nothing, but it can change the world.